Today on Lifestyle, we're visiting the Morton Arbiretum. This is a wonderland for birds, plants, trees, wildlife. We invite you to join us as we find out all about Morton Arbiretum.
Sit up, up.
Each year, more and more dogs die from heartworm infection. Preventing heartworm disease used to be difficult, but now it's easy. Speak to your veterinarian. Find out how important prevention is and how convenient it can be. Stop heartworm disease. It's something simple you can learn to do for him.
Come on, Ron. After 15 years, you're going to quit and work for Midway Airlines.
I think so.
Why? Money?
It's not money, and it sounds corny to me, man.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Hey, Midway believes in me.
What?
For once, I can make a difference. I can help make flying better. And I like that. Does that sound corny?
No, that is corny.
Midway Airlines, what flying should be.
Is the Director of Public Relations here at Morton Arbiretum, and actually we have to thank you, Joe, for making this visit possible today. We've been talking to you about coming out, tried to come out once before, and the rain really took care of that, so we're delighted to be with you today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Tell us about the Morton Arbiretum. I don't think people really know what a wonderful oasis it is in the midst of all of the roads and expressways that surround it.
I think most people think of the place as a park, but it's not really a park. It's something much different. It's an outdoor museum. It's been here since 1922, and it was founded by Joy Morton, who is the founder of the Morton Salt Company. Mm-hmm. And the mission of the place is to bring woody plants here from all over the north temperate world and to test them for their suitability to our climate and soils. And so that's the mission of the Arboretum. Most people who come here come because it's a beautiful oasis, as you said, a good escape from the hustle and bustle out there.
The planes are going overhead, but honestly here everything is tranquil and calm.
It is. It's a very
beautiful and natural.
Yeah, it's a very peaceful place. It's a peaceful place to visit, and it's a peaceful place to work at. And as you'll learn as we go through this program, we have a very efficient and very professional staff. We have a research program here that's unlike any other in the country. We're working to help people know and use good woody plants and help them find out what to do with them in the landscape and how to prepare their landscapes, and just a whole lot of things to do with woody plants.
You mentioned J. Morton's name.
Joy.
Joy Morton? Joy, is it?
Yes, Joy.
Okay, and he was the founder, of course, of the Arbiretum. I've got this wonderful pamphlet here, and I believe I read that he was Secretary of Agriculture at one time.
No, his father, J. Sterling Morton, was the Secretary of Agriculture under Grover Cleveland. He was a pioneer. Sterling Morton was a pioneer who went out to Nebraska in the 1860s from Michigan, and he found that there were no trees out there in Nebraska, so he thought that it would be a good thing for the agricultural economy to get some trees planted out there because they're necessary for farmers. And he went around the state talking up the value of trees, and he was the person responsible for the first Arbor Day.
So it was the father and
the
not
father
the son
of our founder who founded Arbor Day, and of course he passed on his love of trees to his son, Joy Morton, and Joy Morton took that interest and built this Arboretum with it.
He actually gave so much land, but it's grown since then too, hasn't it?
Yeah, over the years we've acquired more and more land till, I think, from 160 acres in the beginning in 1909 when he moved out here to today we have over 1,700 acres. And so it's been a gradual process of acquiring more and more land. But we need that land in order to carry out our mission. We have about 500 acres of woodlands here, which we study to learn things from nature, how Mother Nature takes care of these plants. And so we apply some of those lessons to the things that we have in our collections on the grounds.
You know, speaking of collections, this is a great place for bird watching. I hear the most beautiful bird behind us. I don't know.
I think it might be a brown thrasher or a cat. That's a catbird, maybe.
This is a great place for birds.
Yes, it is. In fact, we teach classes in birding here. We have several people who are experts in birding. And so, you know, it's a good place for anyone who's interested in birds to come out and study here.
I think people might think this is a wildlife center. It isn't specifically that, is it?
It's not specifically a wildlife sanctuary, of course, but this is a good stopping place for the spring birds to migrate through. And also we have wildlife that's just indigenous to this part of the state, and so we have a lot of things. We have Canada geese here that you probably will see on our ponds.
And sometimes you have to watch where you step a little too.
That's true. They do create something of a mess, but we live with that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Are we liable, if we're walking on the paths here, are we liable just to see squirrels, chipmunks?
Oh yes, yeah, you'll see squirrels and chipmunks all over the place. Other creatures are a little bit more nocturnal, the raccoons and the possums and things like that. You'll see deer.
Here.
Yeah, there are foxes here. You'll see deer early in the morning and late in the evening.
At the lakes?
Yeah, they come down to the lakes to drink, and you just have to be alert and be watchful, and you'll see them.
How early can people come here in the morning?
Well, our gates open at 9 o'clock, so it's 9 o'clock till 7 in the evening.
There's hiking here, a lot of hiking, no bicycling.
There are about 25 miles of hiking trails, and we discourage people from riding bikes here because we have valuable collections, and some of the small plants are easily injured. Right. So we try to keep people off the trails with bicycles. But it's a great place to hike. As I said, 25 miles of hiking trails through the collections and through lots of natural areas where you'll see woodlands and wetlands. So springtime is especially interesting in our woodlands with the spring wildflowers emerging, and our big seasons are spring and fall. And
I would think so.
Yeah.
How about the trees here? Well, actually, I've been here sometime in the fall, and the trees are beautiful when everything's turning.
Yeah, we have an interesting array of color here because, as I said, we bring plants here from all over the world, and there are things that you'll see here that you won't see out in the forest preserves or elsewhere.
And they grow here.
Yeah, that's true.
They get a lot of tender, loving care, though, don't they?
Well, they do in the beginning. We sort of nurse things along in the greenhouse, in the nursery, but we're a testing ground for woody plants, and so once they're out on the grounds, they're on their own. We do weed around them and that sort of thing, but we're here to find out whether they'll survive in this climate.
Which makes me wonder, when you talk about weeding, how many people are working here? This has got to be terrific.
We have several gardeners. We have one gardener for each of the major gardens. We're standing in the hedge collection right now. There's one person who does this, but we also have a big core of volunteer helpers who weed in the gardens and who mow also.
Well, it's a big job, but we're going to take a break and come back and talk about some of the buildings that are here and what's inside them, too.
A lot of scientists are worried about global warming. Maybe you should be too.
During our kids' lifetimes, terrible storms, killer hurricanes could hit our coast regularly, while farms and prairies experience worse droughts than in 1988.
There's more at stake than just a few degrees. And you can make a difference while there's still time.
The Sierra Club can show you how. Find out today. Your children, your grandchildren, are counting on you.
Who are you going with? I'll be back in a week. I'm not giving my phone number to anyone. Where are you going? Miami? All I'm going to tell you is I'm due at the Midway Airlines gate in 1 hour. Destination? Somebody will call. You flying Midway? Midway Airlines. They've got low fares. Come on. Are you going to the Bahamas? And who are you going with? Let's just say it's going to be great.
Joe Larkin is really showing us around Morton Arboretum today, and it's a pleasure to be here. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous day. But I suppose every day is beautiful here.
It is, actually. People tend to think of weather as something bad to avoid. We tend not to think that. We think every day is a beautiful day, even if it's raining or snowing or whatever. The out of doors is a really appealing place.
Well, this is a very people-friendly place, too, though, Joe. You have some great buildings here, and maybe you should tell us about those. You mentioned the Visitor Center.
Yes, the Visitor Center is the place where we encourage most of our visitors to stop. We have over 300,000 visitors come through the Arboretum every year. And so the Visitor Center is a good place for them to get information. There's an orientation theater there with free programs that tell about the history of the Arboretum and about our mission. There's also an information building which provides a spot where people can get information about what's going on the grounds that day. They can pick up a map or brochures, trail guides, almost any kind of information you need.
You almost need a trail guide if you're going to take off through here, don't you?
You do, and we provide a map for everyone who comes through. They're given a map at the gate, and so they'll have a little guidance on how to get around. The Visitor Center also has a nice restaurant in it, and that is exclusively for the use of our visitors. We don't really encourage people to come over for lunch. That we encourage our visitors to use that.
The Ginkgo, isn't it?
The Ginkgo restaurant, yes. And it has a changing menu through the seasons. The menu changes. And then also we have the administration building, which houses all of our staff, and a research center, which was built in 1982, and it's a 3-story building. It houses laboratories for the study of soils, plant physiology, plant pathology. There's a herbarium there, which is a collection of dried...
I have to stop you because I'm curious to know about the herbarium. A lot of people press leaves. This is kind of that in a sense, isn't it?
It is, but it's a resource. It's a collection. It's like a library, and it documents the flora of the Chicago region and the flora of the Morton Arboretum. Those specimens are pressed between sheets of newspaper and stored away so that a researcher who, say, wants to know what kinds of maple trees grow in the Chicago region can go to that resource and find them and to see what they look like and compare them to other plants.
Is that open generally to the public, though?
It is, but you need to call and make an arrangement with the curator. But yeah, we do encourage the public to come and visit.
This is an educational place, but it's also very, as you were talking about, it's very serious about research. What kind of research goes on here, actually?
Well, we do research on every aspect of plants, from the soils, first, how things are sited. We have done a survey of all the soils on the Arboretum so that we know what kind of soil is in which area so that we can site plants properly. We do root system studies. We do studies of the entire plant. The research staff has just they have ecologists on the staff too, who not just a specific plant, but a plant in its environment. So we study the total environment of the plant, from the soil to the root systems to the leaves to the ecological habitats of these plants. So,
a living museum is what this is.
That's right, it is.
Outdoor museum. We should find out now. Are you open every day here?
Yes, we are. We're open every day. The grounds are open year-round. There are a couple of days during the year when the buildings are closed. I think Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, the buildings are closed.
You get off then, do you? They don't make you work
they don't make us work all the time.
So this is open all through the winter?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And winter is a beautiful time here. People
no cross-country skiing, I suppose.
We do have a cross-country skiing program, but it's under evaluation right now. We are thinking about discontinuing that program just because we've had problems with conflicting with our plant collections.
So the main way of getting around here is walking.
Walking. There are also 8 miles of roads where people can drive through, and they can park in parking lots along the way and get out and discover different kinds of landscapes, from deep woods to the open areas in our collections.
I think we should find out about how much does it cost to get in. Is it expensive?
Well, it's $3 per car to get in, so that's relatively cheap. You can pile 6 or 8 people in the car and get in for $3.
You sure? You can't beat that. The whole family can
That's
come.
right.
Grandma and Grandpa.
On Wednesdays, the fee is reduced to $1. But if you become a member of the Arbiretum, you'll get free admission throughout the year. Membership for an individual is $25. For a family, it's $35. And so...
does that entitle you to other things as well?
That does entitle you to 2 publications, the Morton Arbiretum Quarterly, which is a scientific magazine, and our publication called Events, News, and Classes, which is just what it the title describes. It describes all of our events, all of the classes that go on here, and gives you news about the staff and about our programs. So those 2 publications are mailed to our members on a quarterly basis, and members get free admission to the grounds, and they get other things like an opportunity to get involved in our research program. We have a thing called the Members Cooperative Research Program, where we invite our members to come and take plants from our research efforts and plant them in their own landscapes to see how they do outside the Arboretum.
Nice. Now that's really nice. You know what I want to do? I want to give you the phone number. Of course, you probably know it, right?
I do. It's 968-0074. That's our main phone number, our main information line.
All right, and if you call that, you can find out any question you might have, although it's here every day, opens at 9 in the morning, closes at
7 o'clock during the summer, during the daylight savings hours, and at 5 o'clock the rest of the year.
You've had to learn a lot of the history and know a lot of the background. What do you think Joy Morton would think about the Morton Arboretum today?
Oh, I think he'd be very pleased with it. He was advised that he was concerned that he might be too far away from the city, being 25 miles out here. Well, it's turned out that the city has come out to meet him, and this place now has become an oasis in one of the fastest growing counties in the United States. And
endangered?
Yes, I believe we've had some problems with encroachment, with conflicting societal values. We have a problem moving people from one place to another, and a big open space like the Morton Arboretum is sometimes appealing to those who are developing highways and other things.
But it's here now.
But we're here, that's right, and we're being protected, and I think
Uh-huh.
Joy Morton would applaud us for our efforts to keep it this way.
That's wonderful. It's here now, here for you to enjoy. We're going to take a break, but we're coming back as Lifestyle continues. Thank
The village of Lombard, known for its annual Lilac Festival, was incorporated in 1869. This small, quiet town was a station stop for a different sort of railroad, the Underground Railroad. Distinguished residents Colonel William Plum and his wife Helen began the lilac heritage when they brought back 2 lilac bushes from France. The Plum estate has since become Lilacia Park and the Helen M. Plum Memorial Library. Today, Lombard celebrates its lilac heritage with an annual parade and festival in late May. As an elected official and a resident, I'm proud to call Lombard my hometown.
Contenental Cablevision, at home in Lombard.
The familiar signs and symbols of our modern world, They come in all shapes and sizes and are part of our everyday lives. But now there's a symbol for the new decade you should get to know. Introducing Green Alert, a global signal of environmental awareness with information we can all use to protect our fragile planet. Green Alert. Come to know it and understand what it means, because to us, it's more than a symbol. It's a commitment, and it's only on the Discovery Channel.
Dr. Tom Green is a plant pathologist here at Morton Arbiretum, and we wanted to speak with him particularly because of the cicada problem, or it isn't a problem really, but it's going to be a problem, especially if you're planning an outdoor party or anything coming up real soon. Tell us about the cicadas.
Well, the cicadas that we're talking about at this time are the 17-year locust, and we see them once every 17 years. Their last occurrence was in 1973. They're going to be much more of a nuisance than they are a threat to vegetation. They're going to be a big problem in areas that have been forested, particularly in the last 17 years. So people who have small plants, who have planted and are in those particular areas, might want to take some protection, might want to put something like cheesecloth around the plants. If you do that, you're going to have to cover the stems too. The cicadas, when they emerge, they don't have wings. They crawl, and they crawl on vertical surfaces, so they'll crawl up tree trunks mostly, and then they will shed their skins and develop their wings. At that time, after their wings elongate and dry, then they will fly around, and so they'll be kind of all over everywhere.
It kind of sounds to me like you don't want to stand outside any one place too long, right? Does this happen quickly? I mean, they're saying to us like, what, on May 24th or midnight, May 23rd, something like that. Is that exact?
No, it's more based on probably the soil temperatures. When the soil temperatures are right, they will come out, and they'll all kind of come out together, though their period of emergence may be somewhere between late May and into July, but we will see most of them coming at one time.
A lot of holes in the yard now. Is that going to do anything to our lawn?
Well, if anything, I think it may be something that would be of a benefit, because they're aerifying the soil. So that will probably, particularly with all the water that we have here, may help get some oxygen down into the lower levels of the soil.
There are a lot of questions about, will this be one of the biggest years for this? And where will people have cicadas? Does everybody have the same kind of outpouring and outcropping? And here we are at the Arbiretum. Are you expecting a huge turnout of locusts here? Trees.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of cicadas here. In this open area where we're at right now, it was farmed in the 1920s, and then as the Arbiretum was developed, it was planted into trees. So this hasn't really been a good location for cicadas for some time. But in our forested areas, there are plenty of holes, and there will be plenty of cicadas, millions per acre.
Millions? Millions per acre. Well, a good thing has come out about all this, maybe, and that is that one professor at the University of Chicago is telling us that we can eat them, that they're really a delicacy. What do you know about that?
Well, I don't know too much about eating them. I think that we will have an opportunity for people to do a lot of experimentation if they want to do that.
Well, they say they're a delicacy. There are even recipes out now for cicadas. No chance of people running out here just to grab up the cicadas and haul them home.
I think that there will be plenty of opportunities for people to get cicadas wherever they're at.
Even in areas now that if you're really in the suburban and community town area, we have to be gradually displacing where these cicadas can go. We're putting down more blacktop all the time. Is that not a threat to these?
Well, the fields or the areas that were farmland are not going to have a problem, but the areas that were wooded 17 years ago or 16 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, up to 17 years ago, are going to have cicadas.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and if anybody happens to have a wedding planned or anything like that at that time at a big outdoor party, they're just going to have to tough it through it. How long will they be with us?
Between the end of May and into July. So, but most of them will kind of come out at one time. They'll peak, but they'll be around. They'll be very noisy. That's going to be a problem. The noise will be a disturbance. The fact that there's these large insects flying around will be a disturbance, and then the potential injury to small plants can cause problems.
You are primarily concerned, of course, with insects and how they affect trees, but also any kind of disease. And we were talking just a minute ago about, is it the coming disease that you feel, is there a season of diseases that affect different trees? We're having trouble in Elmhurst, have for a long time with the elms, but something new's coming.
Well, this year, because of the wet weather, it's been cool and wet, and it's just ideal for a lot of leaf diseases. So we're going to see a lot of apple scab, a lot of defoliation of some crab apples. We're going to see a lot of problems with sycamore this year. We've already seen it, and as long as the weather stays like this, it's going to continue to develop.
We're going to want to blame the cicadas if we see the leaves on our trees affected and that sort of thing. You're saying that isn't it? It's probably going to be because of the rains that we've had.
Yeah, more of it of the diseases are going to be because of the rains and the cool weather, and you're going to see individual leaves dropping off at all different times of the year, whereas the cicadas will only cause injury to the small twigs. So you'll see dying small branches. The whole branch will flag. It's a symptom that we call it, is flagging. But where the individual leaves are affected and the individual leaves fall off, that's due to disease.
A tree is a treasure, and we don't like to lose them. Anything we can do to protect, for example?
Well, I always tell people that the single most important thing that they can do to protect their trees is keep them watered during dry periods.
Yeah.
While it's raining, if it's too wet, we can try to offer better drainage if that's possible, but when it's dry, one thing we can do is water them.
So there is some help. What do you do out here with all of these trees? Are you in charge of all these trees, keeping them well, all the plants?
Well, not really. This is an outdoor laboratory, and we plant them here to just see how they will cope on their own. And some of them don't do too well, so if they don't, they die out, and we find out that is not something that's going to work here.
You make tree visits, you know, I mean, do you actually go to the trees to survey, or does someone report back to you there's a tree that's sick or has some kind of insect on it that you should take a look at?
Our collections department, the gardeners and so on, a lot of times when they have a problem with the tree, they'll call me out and ask me to take a look at it, and then we make a decision on what we want to do. Do we want to try and spray to protect? Do we want to put cheesecloth on to protect them? This year out here, we're just kind of holding off on putting a lot of our new little ones out, and we'll do a lot more planting this fall.
Does anything ever just come as we had in Elmhurst, where we just really have a blight of our trees there? Is there anything that just comes through here? I mean, this is a huge undertaking, a huge gathering of all kinds of trees that threatens them?
There's always a threat. There seems to be always something new. We've got a new disease that's hitting ash called ash yellows. And so in plant pathology, I guess, there's always something new. But our solution to this problem is to diversify, to plant more variety, and that way if one thing comes in, that it will only affect a certain number, not all of them.
Well, that's a good thing to do for anybody who's watching at home, too, isn't it? If you're planting, diversify?
Yeah, the other thing, too, is to plant natives, because our native trees here are used to this area, and we bring in a lot of exotics, and they're not used to the area, and so they don't quite do as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time. Now you've heard about the cicadas. Stay on with us. We're going to continue our visit here at Morton Arbiretum.
Attending a convention, traveling to an important meeting, or having an elegant evening on the town, American Limousine will provide you with prompt, professional service. American offers the largest fleet of Cadillac limos in Chicagoland. American services both O'Hare and Midway. American also has transportation for the elderly and discount corporate rates. On special occasions, we can get you there in style. Whether it's to a business meeting or the most memorable day of your life, call American Limousine at 920-8888.
So, what
What's in the shed aquarium anyway?
There's angel fishing, archer fishing, cuttle fishing, finger fishing, lizard fishing, lion fishing, damsel fishing, trigger fish, jelly fishing, killie fishing, jewel fishing, pearl fish, pencil fishing, needle fishing, rabbit fishing, squirrel fish. There's paddle fishing, rudder fishing, razor fishing, file fishing, turkey fishing, tiger fishing, parrot fishing, tile fish. Between the Field Museum and the Adler Planetarium, there's always something jumping in Chicago Shed Aquarium.
Tony Tisnick is a landscape architect here at Morton Arboretum, and it's a beautiful day, Tony. We're standing in one of your beautiful little gardens, and there are many spots like this all through the Arboretum, aren't there?
Yes, there are. Yes, we have this garden, which is a very popular garden, showing the various kind of plants that can be used for ground cover purposes, which involve the sunny areas, which we're in now.
Right.
We have another area which has part shade, display of plants, and we have some heavier shade, and we're also working on an area which has moist soils, so that eventually when that's all done, it'll be a wonderful display area for people to come and select plants from. We also have other gardens in the area.
People can come and select plants from here?
They can decide what they want. We don't sell them.
No, okay.
But they can make their selections here by seeing what plants look like when they mature and how they fit into landscapes. And visually, they have a better concept of what plants look like than if they're looking in a book, which oftentimes is difficult.
That's true. That's very true. And also, they know it grows here.
That's right.
Just by the fact that it's doing well. And
yes. Well, plant materials are living things, so that even when you think they do well, you might get some severe weather that sometimes may cause problems, and this occurs in almost any kind of plant. Some of the hardy plants that we use oftentimes will succumb to problems of the environment for one reason or other. So, by and large, we try to pick things that are reasonably successful, and we're giving the proper kind of care, they'll perform pretty well.
Do plants become extinct? You know, I mean, we talk about animals all the time who are endangered.
Oh, yes, we have many plants that are,
species?
yes, we have many of those, and the concern is that there are many more that will happen that way if we don't start cleaning up our act a little bit. But that's a very common
Even
threat.
some of our local?
Yes, very local plants that are on the endangered species list. So,
tell us what an architect does, a landscape architect.
Well, a landscape architect is involved with not only the land, but oftentimes with structures, so that we do things like arbors and walks and decks and patios and walkways. And,
so all of the patios and all of the walkways here, you've had a hand in creating them?
Right, and parking areas and driveways and things of that nature, so that we have we're involved totally with the land, and oftentimes with the configuration of the land too. The way the contour is graded so that it fits into a setting that is pleasing and attractive to the visitor. The land is as important as the plants in many cases if you shape it properly. And the other thing that I'm very much concerned about and aware of is that the configuration of planting areas, the beds, the shape of the grass panels and the patio become a line pattern composition which flows together to create the picture that you have. Oftentimes the open space that you're looking at is as important as the plants that surround it, and people sometimes don't think about that. And so frequently you'll find people doing their yards by planting the perimeter with plants. They may have one forsythia, one lilac, one spirea, one thing, and it goes all the way around the yard without any kind of excitement to the arrangement of plants or the configuration of that space that you're working with, which is important. And when you work as a landscape architect, you're concerned about the land surface. You're concerned also by the surroundings, the trees, the buildings that surround, and the trees form the canopy. They oftentimes enclose a volume of space which you can walk into and under. Shrubs act like walls. They give you definition and separation from other properties. Sometimes you need screening, and sometimes you want the individual picture to be within your own yard so that you plant the outside so that you're looking into it. And then we have other plants which are filler plants. They're low shrubs that often come into the foreground. And one of the large areas of interest right now are the perennials, which give you a softness to the landscape. You begin to pull that out, and I personally like in many landscapes to use perennials to emphasize and to complement the other plantings so that you have color that comes not all at once in a big smash of color, but a kind of continuum of color that occurs from springtime into summer and into autumn. And then when that stops, then you begin to see the exposed branches of trees and their trunks, which also have color, like the sycamore does here. And you find that people will sometimes plant extensive plantings of red twig dogwoods for winter color. Sometimes they're overdone, but there are those sources for the color that comes in winter, which people sometimes tend to overlook. We have about 5 months of that kind of landscape, and our landscapes ought to be attractive even in wintertime as well.
You know, a lot of the people at home are trying to create their own little arboretum in a way in their yards. They're trying to do the most to bring nature as close to them. And I guess to do some of the things you were talking about, to beautify, to feel relaxed in, to bring nature home. Have you got some good tips for people at home? I know you actually have classes here, don't you?
Yes, I think one of the finest tips is to be able to maybe attend a class where you get a little bit of background as to how designs emerge and then try to do them. I feel that there's some things that are very important to note from the beginning, and that one is scale. How big do things get? One of the most common mistakes that I find in most people's landscapes is that they buy something that they see in a nursery that might be a foot tall or 2 feet tall, and it's very pretty and it's cute. You know, they bring it home and they put it down someplace, and ultimately the plant gets to be 35 feet tall, and somehow it destroys what you're after. You can't always guess exactly how tall plants are going to get because of the varying soil conditions and things of that nature, but you have to be aware of the fact that scale is a very important part of it. And I urge people very strongly to design a plan drawn to scale and then put the plants into it with scale in mind, drawn on a piece of paper before you do it. So you get a feeling for how the space is going to look before you do all the planting and then find out that you have to move everything.
Is that something they would learn from a class if they came out here?
Yes, Yeah, the other facet that occurs in the landscape is light and shadows. So I find that the landscapes, as you look at them, probably are most intriguing because of the light conditions and the shadows that are cast. Leaves of different kinds reflect light differently, so you get this brilliance in the landscape resulting from light. And I don't know of too many people that select plants because it's going to create a certain kind of shadow effect or a light effect. I think that's very important in the landscape. And the other one is texture. And as you look around our gardens here, you'll find that there's a variety of textures ranging from very fine to medium to coarse. And some of the vertical things like the grasses, which are very delightful. And you see the grasses in the garden here. They're just coming now.
You know, at home we might look at those and say, weeds, get rid of those. You know, we're kind of fanatic almost about anything that's weed-like.
Yes, but I have to be convinced yet that you can tell me that grasses are weed-like. You know, when you see them in their full glory with the movement and the wind and the textures that occur and the proper setting in the garden, you'll find that they're enhancement. And by the demand for some of these materials now in the landscape industry, you'll find that they're not weed-like. The other thing that we are quite concerned about is maybe some of the things that we have considered weed-like and which people think are weed-like because they're not mowed down to 2 inches might have to go with the demands on energy and the pollution of our soils and the air and all these other things. Perhaps the dandelion that you see, and you'll see them here in our lawns, are something of a delight rather than a weed, because they are pretty. They survive very adverse conditions.
Times are going to change for us in terms of what we think about.
And I'm seeing this happening now. People, excuse me, are beginning to utilize more of the native plant materials, the grasses, developing small prairie plantings instead of just having the manicured lawns, which are labor intensive and demanding of energies.
There's new ways to do it. You can find out all about it, of course, if you come out and take a class here. And what's the number for the Morton Arboretum here?
968-0074.
We're going to give you that number again, too, as we talk. Right now we're going to take a look at these gardens. Thank you. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Surely.
Our legends say they're ferocious. The reality is, gorillas are peaceful vegetarians. It is man's insatiable hunger for land that is destroying the forest they depend on for food. Man's population growth that threatens their very existence. To watch gorillas learn and play and grow in a natural environment is a rare experience. One you can enjoy at Brookfield Zoo's Tropic World.
Do I qualify to buy a home?
Can I adopt a child?
Should I have a will?
Are you an inquiring mind?
Best financial strategy for me.
Get help preparing my taxes.
Needing answers?
Find good off-campus housing.
Wanting advice?
Good morning. Your question, please.
Daywatch has the solution.
If you have any questions, the number to call.
We take your phone calls and put you in touch
From our guest this morning.
with the answers. Inquiring minds have questions.
I want to know.
And Daywatch listens. 11 Eastern weekdays on CNN.
This is Dr. Gary Watson, and he's a plant physiologist here at Morton Arbiretum, and today we're going to plant a tree, which is a real treat. People love to plant trees. We love to have them in our yards. We always wonder what tree should we plant, but most importantly, I think, Gary, trees are very expensive, and if we don't know what to do with them, sometimes we can lose our investment simply through our own ignorance, and that's what we hope to find out about today.
Yeah, we first thing we do is we stress the importance of preparing the site correctly. We've got some of the work done ahead of time here, but as you can see, we've dug a very wide hole. We haven't just dug a hole big enough to get the root ball in there and sort of cram it in the ground like is the common tendency, because it takes some work to do this. Especially in most of our yards that tend to be kind of hard clay soils, and it's very difficult to dig, and so you dig.
Well, we don't want to mess up the yard either, Gary. We don't want to dig any bigger hole than we have to, right? But you're saying we need to scoop out a much wider space than we may be doing.
The root systems of trees will be very widespread and very shallow. When that tree was dug from the nursery, that root ball is probably only about 12 inches deep or so, and there probably weren't very many roots deeper than that. Most of the roots went out laterally to the sides, and it did have a great deal of root loss because of that. And what you have to do is provide an environment for those roots to grow back out very rapidly. And you don't have to spend a lot of time deeper, especially in those poor soils that are poorly drained.
Right.
The environment for roots is very poor down at the bottom of that hole, and so don't break your back digging a very deep hole. Don't ever dig the hole deeper than you need to in order to get that root ball at the proper level. It needs a very firm base to set on.
I have to honestly say I'm glad this hard part is done, because it does take a little time and effort to dig a hole like this, and especially as you're telling us now, though, you've made it easier in one way. We don't have to go down so deep. We just have to go out a little wider.
Right.
What kind of trees should we be planting in our suburban homes? Yards.
We should be planting anything and everything, I think. We don't want to focus on a single species or a single handful of species wherever possible. We learned our lessons from Dutch elm disease, we hope.
Yep.
And we have recently put together a little booklet that's got over 200 species of trees that could be planted in the landscape. That doesn't mean everyone is appropriate for every situation.
Right.
You have to know exactly where it is you're going to plant and what it is you expect out of the tree in terms of size, horticultural characteristics, its ability to tolerate the kind of soil conditions you have, and everything else.
And you were talking about roots, and roots can be culprits in our yards, especially if they're reaching out towards our water pipes and gas lines and that sort of thing.
Sure. In addition to those 200 trees that you could plant in your yard, there's probably a dozen or more that we really would recommend against planting in your yard. Roots getting into sewer lines is one problem we have with certain species, particularly things like silver maple and some of the other river bottom species.
Wait, don't plant silver maple? Are you saying that?
We recommend against silver maple for a number of reasons.
I have 3 of them in my yard.
We have too many of them in the landscape. That's one of the reasons we recommend against them.
Oh.
They do have a problem getting into openings in the sewer lines and clogging up sewers and causing big bills to get those repaired. They tend to be a very weak wooded tree, so that as they get older, they grow very fast, they get older, and they kind of fall apart.
Bad news.
And so that's kind of tops on our list of things not to plant, and there's also some others.
I would think willows would fit in there.
To some extent, yes. In a normal backyard, willow is not appropriate. Out in the, you can see when we have one right over there. Out in the open landscape, willows are very appropriate.
But you actually do have a list of trees probably not to choose, not to select.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yes, we do.
Okay, that's good to know. What kind of tree is this?
This is commonly called a sour gum. Scientific name is Nyssa sylvatica. It's one of the more unusual ones off of our list, and it's unusual only because it's not very popular. There's no reason not to plant it.
Would we likely find this at the nursery if we were out to choose a
It'll
tree?
be a little harder to find than some, but this one came from one of the local nurseries.
Its advantages, shade, what? Strong?
Oh, it's you can see it tends to be a fairly central leadered tree, which means it's a fairly strong tree, and it's got very many positive attributes to it. It should be a fairly long-lived tree.
Well, let's find out what should happen to this tree in terms of planting.
What we've done already here is, of course, dig the hole. When you have a very wide hole without sides that butt up against the root ball is under the inappropriate time. You may have a tendency for the thing to lean a little bit. So what we've done is we've gone and we've stabilized through the bottom part of the root ball. We put some soil in there and we've tamped it down with our feet so that there is some stability in there.
Okay, so it's straight now.
Yeah, and it's
that's important.
And the right side is facing the right way so that the
Wait a minute, the right side is facing the right way.
The plant is not perfectly symmetrical, and in this case the view is most important to the building. So we worked with Tony to choose which side was the prettiest so that it's facing the direction it'll be most often seen.
Okay, well, I suppose no tree is perfect, so that's something we wouldn't even think about. Okay.
And the next step is we always recommend taking away the twine and the burlap from the root ball, if at all possible. Many times these things don't degrade fast enough. Some of them are treated so that they purposely don't degrade fast enough, and they can be stored for a while. Not only can the twine around the base of the tree restrict the growth of the tree and girdle it, as we call it, but I've actually seen as roots grow out through the burlap, if it doesn't degrade, they actually girdle the new roots coming out. So we recommend just cutting the twine and peeling back the burlap. You don't have to take it out of the hole.
Are you going to show us that now?
We can just do that. It won't take too long.
This is something that I think people might not commonly do. I think they think that it's all right to have that burlap there. Well, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and put this tree in, plant it. Maybe you have trees at home that you plant when a child is born or grandchild is born. It's a nice thing to do. Stay with us as Lifestyle continues.
If fashion's your passion, try these on for size. Home Shopping Club has clothes to fit you and your budget. Experience Designer Row, featuring designer fashions without designer price tags. Join the fashion parade. Look your best in the smartest styles at spectacular savings. Visit our garment district. Tremendous values on casual to formal wear. Check out clothing clearance. Favorite fashions and accessories at unbeatable prices. The latest looks, the lowest prices. There's always something to suit your style on Home Shopping Club.
In 32 seconds, someone will die of cardiovascular disease. When I had a heart attack, I knew it was time to change. I quit smoking, I watched my diet, I lowered my blood pressure, and I watched my weight. I was lucky. Don't wait for your first heart attack. You might not get a second chance.
To find out how you can prevent a heart attack, contact the American Heart Association.
Do you know what your kids are playing with? Nearly 2/3 of all young people try an illicit drug before they finish high school. 20 million Americans currently use marijuana. Over 4 million are abusers of cocaine. 17 million are involved in alcohol-related accidents. For help, call Habilitat's toll-free crisis information and referral hotline now. 1-800-USA-2525. Don't play games with drugs.
Thanks for recycling.
You're welcome. Yeah, I recycle. Brought in a bunch of aluminum cans, even some foil and some old lawn chairs. You know, most people don't realize all the things aluminum recycling can do for us. Money? Hey, sure, that's great. But it also conserves energy and natural resources, helps the environment, and saves landfill space. That's a real plus nowadays. Do your part. Recycle aluminum.
For an aluminum recycling center near you, call toll-free 1-800-228-2525.
Well, Dr. Gary Watson is here. He's a plant physiologist at Morton Arbiretum, and he's showing us how to put this tree in. I think it's a trick. This is one of those Tom Sawyer things, isn't it, Gary? That's what it looks like to me. Who we can all get in here to... Well, there can't be any trick to putting the dirt back in around here, is there?
No, there may be a tendency to try to compact it down and as much as you want, but really you should only stamp on the soil and compact it down as much as you need to make sure that it's stable.
You know, I have to stop you a minute. I'm surprised. I know we've never put a tree in at home that we didn't lay the hose in there with water to put a lot of water in.
We'll water it afterwards, and it's not a problem.
Oh, really?
Sometimes you can use water to settle the soil around the root ball.
Uh-huh.
But in this case, the soil's so friable here that it'll...
Is that because of all the rain that we have had? I mean, we've really had an unusual amount of rain.
Well, we have, but that's not... It's just the soil in this area is quite good and quite deep. So the trees grow very well in this area. Unfortunately, we sometimes just have a few inches of topsoil on top of what amounts to the soil that comes out of the basement or someplace that they've spread over the front lawn. And in that case, that's exactly the reason for this shallow hole that we dig.
Well, after this is filled in, and it will be, we're going to finish it off, but after this is filled in, what happens with the tree now? You water.
The next thing we'll do is probably put a layer of mulch over the top. It helps to conserve the soil moisture and provides a good environment for the roots to grow. And we'll water it in and make sure that it stays watered. This in the hot, dry summertime, especially like we had a couple of years ago, it may take only a few days for the water to be used up in that root ball where the roots are. The water is not likely to move very rapidly from the soil around the root ball into the root ball. And so all the water that the tree gets is from that very limited area. And so it dries out fairly readily. Of course, you know, if it's 95 degrees and no rain like we had a couple of years ago,
That's right.
It can only take a couple of days sometimes.
That had a huge effect on a lot of trees, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, although I think the trees were much more resilient than we thought they were at the time.
And they bounced back?
If you look around, we haven't lost a huge number of trees, but a lot of the dead branches we see in trees even now are related to the drought and the stress of a couple of years ago. And you'll notice that we're just planting this so that the top of the root ball is at ground level here. People have a tendency to want to cover up that root ball with several inches of soil. So it's one of the biggest problems we have in the landscape. We go back and try to figure out why trees have not transplanted well, and sometimes we find them up to a foot deep.
I think I did that, Gary. I think I threw a little dirt. You're saying...
Oh, a little bit on top.
Yeah, you're saying don't put dirt up on top. And then do you stamp it around? I always remember seeing people...
Just minimal. If you need to stabilize it so that it doesn't tip over, you can go ahead and do that as much as you need. But there's no other reason to compact the soil around there other than that.
How will you know if the tree takes? You know what I mean?
Well, it's going to be several years. One of the things you can do is look at the growth. It's going to be difficult to see here, but the bud scale scars is where the growth terminates every year. And so my fingers right now are in between two sets of bud scale scars. This is how much that tree grew in 1989. From here to somewhere out here is where it'll grow in 1990. And you can go back several years sometime. And what will happen this year, because it's transplanted, the growth will be very, very small. And then next year, hopefully, it'll be a little better, and then get back to normal. And so you can pretty well tell how a tree is recovering.
How fast would you expect this tree, for example, to really grow, take off?
It'll probably be stressed for, I'd say, a couple of years. I've developed, it's a very general rule of thumb, but I often say that a tree is going to be stressed and establishing after transplanting for about 1 year for every inch diameter of the trunk. And this is roughly a 2 to 3 inch tree, so
you can expect
it's roughly about a 2-year period of adjustment before it gets established.
So you shouldn't get excited if you've planted the tree and you look out the next season and you say, hey, the tree didn't grow.
Exactly. It should have leaves, but
right.
But those leaves may be small and kind of thin while it's adjusting, especially some of the larger trees that you know, stay stressed for a number of years.
Very interesting.
But the tree will tell you its history in terms of how fast it's growing.
How do you protect it now? What do you suggest, like from insects?
Hopefully you've selected a tree that doesn't have a big problem in the first place with insects and diseases.
Is that on that list too that you offer?
Yes.
Okay.
And unless the tree has a specific problem, we don't recommend any kind of general spraying or anything for control of diseases. There used to be a tendency to just use cover sprays where you just spray it whether needed or not, but that's no longer really accepted. And watering it well is the best thing you can do, and then fertilize it a little bit to get its vigor up after it's established, and keep an eye on it.
Well, we've been away for a second here just so that we could get the whole tree filled in with dirt. You were talking a minute ago about fertilizer, and I'm wondering, is there a fertilizer that you would suggest to people? What's the best here?
Well, most fertilizers have nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in it. Our soils tend to be fairly rich in potassium and phosphorus, and so nitrogen is usually the element that needs to be added most frequently. Sometimes a soil test will help you determine what you need exactly, but the nitrogen probably needs to be added almost on a yearly basis, the others only periodically.
Well, at any rate, there are classes here that will help people if they really want to know more about their soil and about their trees and what tree to choose. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, we have several classes. I teach classes myself on various aspects of root care and root growth of plants. We have a series in the spring that's just finishing up now, I think, that has to do with designing and planting your landscape.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Gary Watson. You've taught us a lot today, and if you like, I'll give you a hand, or you can start moving that mulch over, and we'll finish off on this tree, planting a tree here at Morton Arboretum. Nice thing to do on a beautiful day.
Today's the day you can decide what kind of life your kids and their kids will have.
If we don't do something about global warming will surely do something about them.
Before long, America's heartland might have to live with temperatures over 90 degrees for almost a third of each year.
Chicago now has 2 weeks a year over 90 degrees. In just 60 years, it could expect 2 months each year.
If the weather in Dallas could go over 100 degrees for 2.5 months, imagine what could happen in Phoenix.
If you think global warming is only about warmer temperatures, it's only the beginning.
In our kids' lifetimes, drinking water could be a problem as salty ocean water backs into our rivers.
America's heartland could have trouble growing the corn, wheat, and oats that we need for bread and cereal.
Every man, woman, and child can help make a difference, and that includes you.
The Sierra Club can show you how. Find out today. Your children, your grandchildren are counting on you.
A message from your Shriners Hospitals.
You know, kids, the kitchen ain't a playground. There's a lot of danger hiding in here. That dangling cord can be a disaster. Especially if they grab hold and yank me.
My cord should be up.
Hey, you said it. Keep dangling cords out of reach. Delicious cookies can be a tempting treat.
I should be over there.
Keep goodies away from heat so kids don't get more than a treat. There's a lot of things in here that can burn you.
Ooh, me.
By itself, it's harmless, but filled with scalding hot water.
I just wait for a child to grab my handle, then.
Uh-oh, a really bad burn. So to stay out of hot water, keep those pot handles turned in.